by definition, phobia is fear, so Islamophobia is the fear of Islam.
And anything affiliated with Islam, including Muslims.
And we are seeing it today on airwaves, where media commentators, where government officials, where religious leaders are all
bent on making Muslims and Islam look like they are the threat to America. Not a group of individuals, but as a religion, that it is threatening American society.
There is this fear based off of misperception, and oftentimes that misperception is based off of one of two things: flat out ignorance or completely wrongful information.
It's really all around. There's not one source. It's an industry that is exploiting the fears and the hysteria from 9/11 now, and they're riding that wave to continue their anti-Islamic rhetoric.
Particularly when people haven't met a Muslim before, I think that their primary education about Islam and Muslims comes through a television screen or a film screen.
You have documentaries like Obsession, like the new anti-Semitism of the 21st century, that are painting Islam and Muslims as the threat, not only to America, but to modern civilization.
We're at war with America, period. And we're going to win that war by convincing enough Americans through the spread of fear, insecurity, and terror to change their ways.
On the level of Hollywood, when we constantly are bombarded with images of gruesome, bloody, barbaric Muslims. And we see it in TV series, such as the most recent series, 24, where you have a nuclear strike in Los Angeles, terrorists operating within our own neighborhoods.
One of our engineers, a man who we now know is a terrorist named Habib Marwan, was running his own covert organization from within our company.
A show like Sleeper Cell on Showtime, which has gone out of its way to try to offer more three-dimensional portrayals of Islam and Muslims, but it's still within the overall specter of terrorism. The show is called Sleeper Cell. The Muslim experience is defined through the lens of terrorism.
You know what to do? Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
And again, they're talking about a very specific group of extremists in a very specific place, but the conclusion is that this is a worldwide movement against the West. This is similar to Nazi propaganda against Jews, that they're only talking about a specific group of Jews, but this is a Jewish campaign against Germany, or a Jewish campaign against the West.
There's also a concerted effort by certain individuals who do not want to see Muslim Americans be actively integrated and participating within the political and social and civic spheres. It is their full-time job, it is their profession and their calling in life to cast any kind of suspicion or doubt about the credibility and the integrity and the patriotism of mainstream Muslim American organizations and leaders.
Prove to me that you are not working with our enemies, and I know you're not. I'm not accusing you of being an enemy, but that's the way I feel, and I think a lot of Americans will feel that way.
We have in the example of Keith Ellison, a Muslim who is the perfect example of integrating into American society through civic engagement by becoming a member of Congress.
When Keith Ellison decided to give his oath on the Quran, and the reaction to that was a reaction of what's going to happen to our civilization. It was perceived as an erosion of the American civilization, which is exactly typical of Islamophobia.
Even though Muslim Americans are working with the highest levels of government agencies, despite that, most people just don't hear that story. And that is because, in many cases, the government officials that are working with Muslims choose to keep that relationship in the closet.
When we look historically at the times when our country has violated human rights on a massive scale, so often it's the targeted minorities, the ones that are vulnerable, the ones who have been always the targeted of negative stereotyping. Those are the communities that most need government's assistance when communities are filled with fear.
Fear keeps you from getting the information and the facts that you need for the strategy that you're going to have to get this country out of the crosshairs that it so fears being in. So if we're going to fight terrorism, we can't. Islamophobia is a huge boulder in that road.
I have a deep love and affection for my country. There's no one who is more patriotic than I am, and so I don't need to prove my patriotic stripes.
When somebody of that stature can be subjected to what can only be called a racist and xenophobic question, then we know that Islamophobia is alive and well and breathing in this country. Because if a member of Congress can be treated with that kind of disrespect and that kind of suspicion, then what chance does a store owner have, or a school teacher, or a physician, or a student, or a student, or a student?
We studied the Romans, and then now we're studying the Islam civilization. Then the movie Not Without My Daughter came. When we got to that part where he hits his wife and all that stuff, they start saying that I'm gonna hit my wife when I grow. And they would call me mostly cuss words. I wouldn't say hi to anybody. I would barely eat. I would be a little stressed out,
Muslim students in high school or in college or even in elementary school is probably facing a lot of anti-Muslim and anti-Islamic rhetoric right now.
We have seen in collecting our hate crime data over the years that unfortunately Muslims and Middle Easterners and people perceived to be have been really targeted with horrific crimes that are motivated by deep hatred or animosity or fear.
Mosques being shot at and vandalized. We see students being constantly being harassed and sometimes subject to discrimination.
They were all like, oh, so this is Islam? This is peace? They say you're a terrorist, and they say you're the problem for 9/11, killing innocent people and everything. Is that what your religion teaches you?
The whole classroom shouting bomb the Muslims.
I got in a fight in school because of that. He's like, yeah, oh 9/11, it's all because of you guys and stuff.
The teacher just didn't care. They were saying bomb Muslims, and I didn't know that they knew that I was a Muslim.
Oh, you're Osama's little brother, what? And he hit me in my face. And then the teacher tried to have a discussion about Muslims and stuff, and she basically started talking bad about us as well. Talking about, yeah, they do. So what if they believe blowing up people is alright? And I was like, and she wouldn't let me talk to explain myself as a Muslim. So she just told me to be quiet the whole time.
We cannot generalize an entire community, entire religious group to be terrorists, to be foreigners. And that's unfortunately what we see in our hate crime reports. That kind of sentiment of saying, go home. And there's nothing worse you can experience as a member of a society or community than to be told you don't belong here.
Actually, it puts us in a virtual internment camp. So it doesn't have to have a gate and defenses and guards, but virtually you find yourself in an internment camp.
It starts with an attack against Muslims, then it ends with an attack against all immigrants. So Islamophobia is just the starting point of something that is anti-American, that is hurting all of society, not just Muslims.
Americans are scared. When people are scared, they get stupid. And they do things that make no sense and actually increase the problem. We see it in our foreign policy, and I'm afraid we may come to see it in our domestic policy if we don't head it off at the pass.
The idea behind everything that MPAC is trying to do with this Truth Over Fear campaign is to empower and educate Muslim Americans in local communities so that they use the voice that they have been given and take pride in their religious identity, and that they use that for the best possible ends.
We are America. We are part of this country. We pay our taxes, and we demand representation. We need to fight back in an effective way through more engagement with the rest of society.
Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. We better get rid of our fears of it if we're going to engage it in a way that increases our safety.
It will be only a matter of time until perceptions are created and the perceptions become reality. We have to fight fear by truth. We have to fight hate by love. As the Quran says, deter what is evil by what is good until your worst enemy becomes like your close friend.
I gotta say is respect us. Because we are, just like Sharif said, we're humans. Just like you. We do the same things you do, so